Hey, everybody, welcome to Before College TV. Today, I've got John Israel with me. We're going to be asking John 5 big questions. You might be familiar with John, you might not be, but you will be now. John's an author, speaker, and Hall of Fame sales representative who paid his way through college by selling and skating. A fascinating story. He's one of the most grateful people you will ever meet. You can learn about John and his Mr. Thank You project at MrThankYou.com. He also has a book. It's the Mr. Thank You Project, a journey to elevate the level of gratitude on the planet, one card at a time. And the book chronicles John's letter writing, thank you letter writing journey, 365 days, 5 thank you notes a day. I mean, John, that's a lot of thank you notes. Are you still writing?
Yeah, I still write cards pretty regularly. I don't do 5 a day anymore. The intention for me doing that wasn't to keep it forever, but it was kind of to challenge myself, really, to see, number one, if I could do it. And once we did that, then I kind of, molded to more of like a regular practice that I could do weekly.
That's fantastic. I want to hear about that. In fact, I'd love to know, John, is there a thank you card close by that you've started to write that you could just pull up? Like, I'd like to look, you must have a thank you card like near you.
Oh, I mean, I've got a bajillion.
Can you reach down? I don't want one that's on the wall because those are too good.
Well, these aren't. Yes,
What?
these are not ones that I've written. These are. So when you write 1,825 thank you cards in a year to people, you're known as Mr. Thank You. You speak on gratitude and how it makes connections that last inside of school and outside of school and inside of business and outside of business. You get some thank you cards in the mail. So it's kind of a neat thing. I don't think I have any that I've partially written. Usually I try to write them and just kind of send them out right away.
What's the last one you wrote?
Oh, great question. So yesterday, so a lot of who I work with now is I work with, initially I used to work with college students. That's kind of how we met at NACA, right? So the National Association of Campus Activities. Now,
John, I'm going to interrupt you because here's the thing. I hate interrupting because it's just rude. It's rude. But earlier, before we started rolling, you were being really kind. You were talking about how we met at NACA and just I remember that like it was yesterday, dude. Like I remember it. So I didn't want to talk about it before we were rolling here because it was such a beautiful exchange and you were so kind and just you have a light to you. Like you really, I want to show people that light. But man, like you were so nice to me. Tell me a little bit about what you were going to say before I so rudely interrupted you.
Yeah, well, so let me fold them together. So with that, initially a lot of my work, this is how we met was through speaking at colleges and speaking to students. Now a lot of my work is in training companies, sales organizations, and businesses how to create loyalty, how to make connections that last. And really, we try to help companies and businesses prevent client and employee attrition, which is essentially when you work with somebody and then eventually they go away. So a lot of that comes down to the relationship, the connection, and gratitude is a big piece of that, right? That's how the whole Mr. Thank You, writing a lot of thank you cards became like something that was very translative into business. But funny enough, the inspiration came from college. But how we met, by the way, so just to tell that story, and then we can fold into Mr. Thank You here. So I got really fortunate to pick up a sales job early in my college career. I was 19 years old and I got a job selling Cutco knives house to house. It was a great job. I learned a lot. I made a bunch of money. We might talk about that. But ultimately with that, I started to become a trainer for the company. So I was and they recruit a lot of college kids. So I used to teach and train college students professional selling skills, professional networking skills. And it was this really cool thing. And I remember thinking like, wow, I'd love to do this professionally. So I started looking into like, who does this for a living? And I started looking up like college speakers. And the first person that came up was Harlan Cohen. And so I bought all of his books and I read all of them because I was trying to get ideas for my own book.
Harlan Coben, me. You're talking about me.
Yeah, actually you. Yes, the Harlan Cohen.
That's
and so I bought all Harlan's books. And it was just funny because I had a friend who was also a college speaker named John Vroman. So you might know John. John was a college speaker of the year. Great guy. And so I went with him. I shadowed him at NACA, so the National Association of Campus Activities National Conference. And as I get there, I'm walking through just a hallway. And one of the first people I see is Harlan Cohen. And I was like, Harlan, I know you. Can you sign my books? And I literally pulled out my books and you're like, how did you get these? These are like my oldest books that I've ever written. And I was like, man, I went to town. I looked for everything you had. And it was just cool. We made that connection there, right? Then we kind of
How many
stayed in
years
touch.
ago was that?
That was in 2014. So that was right when I had made a transition to start speaking professionally.
Yeah.
And, wanted to kind of engulf myself into that world. So I went to the event, we met, we kind of stayed in touch loosely. And then obviously over the last couple of years, we've reconnected.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of my initial experience with Harlan Cohen. So just such a great gift of like quality knowledge. I love your writing. The Naked Roommate, such a risque title, got me reading it, but it was also really practical advice. I was like, okay, this guy actually knows what he's talking about. Yeah. So anyways, I fell in love with you before you knew who I was. So I was like, oh, this guy's great. So it's really cool that we get to be friends now. I mean, of course, we're like, you're married and with kids. I'm married with kids, right? It was more of like a professional love, but you get the idea.
I got it, man. I feel it. And I felt it then. And I was excited to meet you. It's fun to meet someone who appreciates what you do and can be grateful for that. And I think just your natural ability to just be present and express gratitude is something that it doesn't surprise me what you're doing and how you're able to help people beyond the college world, in just the corporate world and just everyday relationships, because like who's going to be upset with you when you express gratitude? I was thinking about you. I was thinking about all the cards you've written and all the experiences you've had. And I'm also obsessed with rejection. Like that's the thing. I'm like the king of rejection, and I wear my crown proudly. I'm okay with that. I get rejected every day. And I imagine when you're showering the world with gratitude, you surprisingly might deal with resistance, rejection, people who maybe are surprised or taken aback. When have you showered someone with gratitude and been rebuffed in a way that made you sour or upset?
Yeah. Well, so I'll share this in a slightly opposite way, which is with the real problem with gratitude. It's not as much on the how people respond to it. I do have a good story around that, but part of it is actually how we show up with our experience of the world, right? So the best definition of the word gratitude is the emotional experience one has when you receive a gift or experience something as a gift. Okay. So just to lay that out. So you feel that gratitude when someone gives you a surprise gift. Maybe it's your birthday, maybe it's not your birthday, and they give you something that's really meaningful. That emotion you feel, that's gratitude. So the other piece with this is gratitude is that thing that you could have after the fact of something really challenging, right? So, for some people, maybe this is too fresh, maybe it's not. I remember being in high school and having a girl like break my heart, and we were together and she broke up with me, and then even worse, she asked out my best friend on a date, and it's just like this whole drama, right? And in the moment, I was like, this is terrible. You're an awful human being. And I was just so upset. Right now, with time, I can look back on that experience. Now that I'm married, I have children, I'm happy. And I can say with gratitude, yeah, I'm actually glad that happened. I'm really grateful it didn't work out that I married that person, because I found who I really needed to be with. So with time and perspective, I can look at a painful experience and say, wow, I can be grateful for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's where gratitude has a lot of power for people, because in the moment, you might not want to be grateful for something that's happening, but eventually you will. So the question is, well, how long do you need to give yourself? And so kind of a funny the experience of that, kind of when in talking about rejection. So one of the titles of the a chapter in my book is called The Gratitude Loop, right? Which is essentially thank you and you're welcome, right? These two pieces together. And I was speaking at a conference, and I was, teaching some sales strategies to students. And this girl came up afterwards and she said, oh, John, that was so great. Thank you for coming. That is exactly what I need. I came here to the conference. I needed to learn about that specific topic. You did a great job. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much. Now, what do you think how are you supposed to respond to that, Harlan? What are you supposed to do, right? And this happens to you, right? If you speak at a college and someone expresses all this love and gratitude, how would you specifically respond to that?
I would say I'm so grateful to know that this reached you, and it just, it means the world. This is why I do what I do. And, thank you so much for the gift of sharing that.
Yeah, I wish I had done that. You know what I actually did? Is I said, oh, man, I appreciate that, but there's just a couple of things that I forgot to say that I missed in my PowerPoint that, I really prepared, but I should have prepared more, and I totally didn't. And I'm really sorry. It could have been better.
Right.
And she looked at me with this like utter confusion, just like, oh, I thought it was great, and then walked away. And so it was this experience of like a lot of our biggest
Yeah.
challenges with gratitude are, what are you present to? Right. And so much of what we look at in ourselves or of the world is like, what's wrong?
Yeah.
Right. And that in lies like an innate human problem, which is, it's called a negative bias. You're probably familiar with this. It's a psychological term where we are prone to notice what's wrong before we notice what's right.
Right.
And so, and it comes from the caveman and cavewoman days when we'd hear a growl in the bushes, and, we wouldn't assume it's a cute little kitty cat. We would think, oh my gosh, that's a saber-toothed tiger. We would run away and we would live to see another day. So we develop this habit as human beings to look for what's wrong before we look for what's right. Well, the challenge is, especially in our culture, that we're so prone, and we're training people to just, with the news and everything, to like look for what's wrong. Well, you need to ask yourself, well, how is that starting to affect your life? How is it
Right.
affecting your relationships? And we've all experienced this where we've tried to actually give someone gratitude, but they didn't even receive it. And so the interesting thing with that is that when people don't receive gratitude that we try to give to them, it starts to become this like, oh, well, maybe I won't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe I won't try to give them a really thoughtful gift for their birthday because they didn't even say anything. Maybe I'll just send them a gift card and we'll keep it at that. Right. So we
So,
start to,
so when people,
it's a really interesting thing.
so when people don't receive the gratitude that you offer or aren't open to the kind words, you don't take that personally. You look at that as someone is not comfortable receiving because of just the way they've been conditioned.
Yeah. And especially we're all that way. Right. So, I mean, even myself, I mean, that was for me a big wake up call. That was a moment where I was like, John, this girl, like, essentially when you think of what gratitude was, she was giving me gratitude.
Mhm.
She was giving me a
Yeah.
gift. And essentially what I said was, I don't want that gift.
Yeah.
No, no, thank you. And I like pushed it back, and it's like, what are you left with there? It's like, oh, wow, that's sort
Yeah.
of weird.
There's a TED talk. I can't remember who it is. I stream them a lot of times just while I'm working, and this one woman. Oh, I'll include it in the notes because she was so fantastic, and she talked about how, or no, maybe it was. I'm who cares who it was, but I'll note it and share it. But someone talked about I know it was a Stanford talk, and it was a guy who teaches communication who's like so amazing, but talked about how when you offer someone a compliment, what do people do? Sometimes people, when you say something wonderful to someone, sometimes they'll actually step back. They'll actually like distance themselves from the compliment. But what he encourages people to do is to take that compliment. And if I'm messing it up, maybe it's, oh, gosh, I'm ruining the story attributing it, but you take the compliment and you actually bring it to you. You actually physically go, thank you. Yeah, I'm so grateful. This person encourages us to do. And it's a hard thing to do because in order to take it and bring it close to you, you need to feel worthy and
Correct.
deserving. And that is a process. So I want to dig deeper because you are a multifaceted man. And there's a lot to you beyond all of the incredible knowledge you have and share. I want to learn a little bit more about where this started. And I'd like to go back to the high school days. Okay, John, you ready to go there?
Let's do it.
Okay. So you're going to be skating because I know you're a huge skater. So
Yes.
that's going to bring you a lot of joy. So bring me back to your high school days. Let's go to freshman year. Maybe
Ugh.
let's go into
We
February.
go
So
sophomore year, freshman year was a rough year. Maybe we should go to freshman year.
that's the best. Well, I know guys like you. I mean, we're programmed, I think, in a similar way. Transitions are rough, and that's why we
Absolutely.
do what we do,
Oh
right?
man.
So I want to know more about you. I really would love to get inside your world. So February of your freshman year in high school, describe who you were socially, academically, just what drove you emotionally. Just bring me to that place in time.
Oh man. That time I was so I would say essentially it was freshman through through first quarter of sophomore year were my worst.
Great.
And
Perfect time.
yeah, and it was for me, I went to, because I got in a lot of trouble between the ages of 12 and 14. Like, not even kidding. My best friend that I grew up with got arrested. I was fortunately not with him at the moment he got arrested, because we would do the same stuff together, which was like shoplifting or just dumb stuff. And we were skateboarders, right? So there's a bit of a culture of just like, we're kind of ruffians, right?
Right.
And so I got really lucky that him and actually a couple other friends were doing something I just happened to not be there for, and they got arrested and I didn't. And so I got really lucky, because they started going on this path that they just continued to get, pretty like deep into drugs and pretty deep into just like that lifestyle. And my parents caught wind of it, like when my friends got arrested and I didn't. And so they got really particular to make sure I went to a high school out of the area. So they sent me to high school 30 minutes away, which kind of, made it even worse. Cause then I'm like this new kid at a high school. I don't know anybody. It was an all boys private school. So it was even, add to the whatever awkwardness of things. And I just remember being there and didn't really have any friends, didn't fit in. But the fun thing, here was the one thing though, what did have me fit in was I was a skateboarder, and I was unique and I was interesting. And that was the one thing, like, it didn't matter where I was a skateboarder. And I kind of created this identity. It started in high school that I became known as Skate John. So before I was Mr. Thank You, as you know me today, I was Skate John in high school and college. And so I started to skate around school and made some friends. And fortunately, one of the kids who was super duper smart in a lot of the honors classes actually also skateboarded. Now, granted, he wasn't very good, but he loved to skateboard and we became friends. And so he was kind of like this for me, like from freshman to sophomore year, kind of like this guiding light of like, maybe there's hope in the world.
What's his name?
Nick. And Nick actually became my best friend and the best man at my wedding when I got married several years later. Great guy, super smart. And so back then I just got a lot of detentions. I had a lot of dress code violations. I would wear clothes because you had to wear the certain color code and these different things. For me, here's the reality. I didn't have a lot of money. And so I didn't have the right clothes, and I was too embarrassed to ask my mom to go buy me clothes because we didn't have money. And so I just wore the wrong color combinations and things to school. And I got detentions because I kept having dress code violations, because I didn't have the right clothes, because we didn't have money for it. And my parents probably, in hindsight, they probably could have gone and done it for me, but I was just so ashamed of who I was. And I kind of felt like I was the poorest kid in the richest school. So I really felt like I didn't fit in. And so that all changed with like my community, my relationships going into my sophomore year, when I started to run cross country and track. And I didn't realize this, but I was actually a really good runner. And I had this random just breakout race where I made varsity immediately. There's like you have to do it by a certain time. You have to do 3 miles in under 18 minutes, so below a 6-minute average. And I did that out of nowhere. My coach was shocked. My team was shocked. And they're like, wow, this kid's actually got some talent. But I was struggling in school, and my coach got a notice that I had 3 deficiencies, which meant there were 3 classes out of 6 that I was getting less than a C. And this is what changed my life. And I wrote about this in my first book called Skating Through College. And what happened was he came up to me at practice and he said, and he had the 3 pink slips, and he like slaps them in my chest. He's like, what's with this? And then I knew what it was. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't know. Looks like they're notices from my teachers. He's like, yeah, these are called deficiencies, which means you're not doing your schoolwork. And he said, we have standards for our team. And if you're not going to abide by the standards, you're off the team. So you need to fix this or you're off the team. Don't bother showing up to practice today. And he was ruthless.
What's his name?
Coach Downey. Coach Downey. He passed.
What's he look like?
He passed away. I could show you a picture. He's literally hanging on my wall. So this is actually this is actually really might make me cry showing this photo, but that's Coach Downey. He's wearing my Letterman jacket. That's me with a much better hairline, which was the case. This is actually at the state championship. So when I was we actually made it to state championships every year that I was in high school. Not to say like give credit to me for that, but we just had a really good team and a really good coach. Here was the thing. So because he did that, it was like the first person in my life who challenged me to be better. And he was like, hey, we have standards for this team. If you want to belong here, which you do for the fact that you're an athlete and you're fast, but we have a standard for the character of our people. And that was the first time I'd ever been involved in anything that had character as a quality trait. And that changed everything. And so I
Right.
literally went to every single teacher as humble as I could be. And I said, I am sorry. I'm screwing everything up. I'm not paying attention. I really want to make this work. Because also I had some disciplinary issues, and I was given one of the vice principal actually told me that if I didn't shape up my discipline, that I was going to get kicked out of the school. So I had like kind of bad stuff coming from all.
Yeah.
And for some people, they might look at that and be like, "Oh, well, I'm just not meant for this school, and I'm just gonna leave, right?" Or be okay with that. But there was part of me that I think it was my coach that like I had this hope that I could do something good with my life. But I
Right.
was like, let's stick this out. Let's find a way. And I converted that like 2.7 GPA to like a 3.5 by the end of that semester. One of my D's I converted to an A minus, which was math. And I thought I sucked at math. And it actually, because I went to tutoring every single day after school from that
Yeah.
point on, I learned that I'm actually really good and I really loved math. And it's actually even a core quality of what makes me a good salesperson and a business person is just numbers.
Yeah.
So that changed everything. And then from there on, here's an interesting fact: our school, our cross country team, my senior year of high school, we were actually ranked the number two school in the entire state of California for highest GPA per capita per runner. So we had an
Wow.
average of like a 4.2 GPA. And it was because of the standards that my coach held. And I think for a lot of students, like that can be a challenging thing, which is like number one, it's called receiving leadership, right? Being humble enough to be led. And I wasn't open to that initially. But I think that because I saw some potential success in myself, and because my coach actually saw something in me and he held me to a standard, it was like I had something I wanted to work towards, and that honestly that changed everything for me. And I was skateboarding during this whole time, so I was still like a skateboard kid, but it
Right.
was like those aspects of being in school that started to have me think I could create a better life than just skateboarding.
Yeah. I mean, it's a chilling story because you could have easily gone down a different path.
Totally.
And a lot of students do go down that path, but then something snapped, something made you believe, and it was the coach. But I mean, were you longing for more? Was there, you know, how do you do this? Like, so if there's somebody out there who's, they just know they're on a bad path, they know that they're hanging out with the wrong people, and they want to make that change, how do you do that?
Yeah. Uh, so there's a couple things that were really related to luck, which was the only reason. This is if there's any parents around, and I don't know if any students can do anything about this, but like my mom said, "Hey, if you do a sport every year you're in high school, we're going to help you pay for a car when you're old enough." I was like, okay, what's the easiest sport that I can do that you basically can't get cut from, right? And I was like, nobody wants to do cross country. Let's go do that, right? And then it turns out we actually have a prolific team, and I didn't know that we were like state champions and all this stuff. So I just happened to show up, and but what was interesting for me was like, and this was I kind of became this little bit of a chameleon where I was able to learn how to adapt to different situations. So, for example, I could go hang with my skate friends because that's who I grew up with, right? And funny enough, like a lot of my friends who actually did become professional skateboarders, who like really did take it very far, didn't even graduate high school. I had more friends who didn't graduate high school than who did. Think about that. That's an interesting trait. And
Yeah.
I was also part of the number two academic running team in the state of California. So it's like, how in the hell do you have those two
Yeah.
things? So for me, what was so unique about, and I'm sure you talk about this as well in some of your books, but it's like environment is so important of who you're spending time with. So for me, being on this cross country team that had these just like really smart kids that they essentially I became a teammate because I was an elite runner, and it was almost like there's standards to be here, and I was like, when you're hanging around smart kids, you just want to do better. And so for me, that drove me to like, be more intentional in school, and I wanted to be in their classes. So I worked my way up into honors classes. And then it just kind of became the water that I swam in. And so it was like, for me, it was like it became seasonal where I would run during running season, and then I would skate during the off season. Then I would run during running season, and then I would skate in the summers. And that just kind of became my routine. And then
You party with
everything.
the skaters and do, like, those other things, or would you set boundaries? Like, how would you manage being in 2 different social circles?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I don't know. They just were right because they were just such different people.
You were able to stay on track, you didn't fall
Yeah,
into, like, the old ways of, like, or had that group matured where they weren't being as reckless?
Well, I think part of that was because I went to a different high school, right? So
Okay.
when my parents sent me to a high school, I still did meet some kids who skateboarded at the high school, but again, very fortunate. It was a private high school, so the kids weren't. I mean, some of them did get kicked out of school, but for the most part, I think what I actually think it was. It was that one of my that my best friend Nick was a smart kid who skated, and I actually would go to his house after school instead of coming back to my house in our neighborhood, 30 minutes away,
Mhm.
for all my friends who like didn't graduate high school. So it stayed separate because I only saw my other friends on the weekends, and I would
Okay.
only just skate with them on Saturdays and Sundays, and so I think for me it was like they just all got to coexist,
Yeah.
and they didn't really know each other. So it was a little bit of maybe a pink rhino in that case, where it's like very rare, where I had the fortune of going to school far away, which initially I hated and I thought it was the worst thing ever, but it was really actually really good to separate my life that way.
So you mentioned that you didn't have enough money to buy the clothing to match, and you would get detentions for that. And you didn't talk to your parents about this. And then you mentioned going to a private school that's pretty cushy, it sounds like. So how do you get to go to a fancy private school if money isn't something that you have a lot of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm the youngest of five kids. My parents sent all five kids through private Catholic education from kindergarten till college, till high school. College was all on our own. That's what everyone had to do. And what happened was in that process, they didn't save any money for themselves. So we were constantly just out of money. I mean, I can think of specific scenarios where like my skateboard broke. Literally, I remember the day I was skating, my board flew in the street, a car ran it over, and I came home crying. And I was like,
Oh,
I was like, man, I need a board. I don't have a board. And they were like, sorry, we literally have no money to buy you a board. And I just remember being like, man, this sucks. Like this is life. And so really for them, what it was for my parents is that they just valued education very highly. And unfortunately, they valued it more than saving for themselves. So here's what happened, actually, and this is kind of a great leadway into college,
yeah.
which was they basically barely had enough money to get us or get me through school. And then when it went into my senior year or junior senior year, I was like, I need to get a scholarship. Like I need to get into college that I can somehow support myself, because I don't want my parents to follow my parents.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, also during that time, my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And so he
Yeah.
had to leave his job early and retire early. So what happened is they gave him like a chunk of money that was going to get me through my first year of college.
Yeah.
And I got into Gonzaga University, which was a great school. Um, and what this was, I think it's kind of funny. It taught me my first skill of negotiation, which is really interesting that I got into sales. I remember, and I don't know if this might be helpful for students to know, that you can negotiate financial aid. I didn't know this until I tried. So I remember I got accepted to two universities, Marquette University and Gonzaga University. And I got both financial aid statements, both very close. I got academic scholarships for both schools. And I went into, because I was a good runner, but I wasn't fast enough to get any money for it.
Okay.
And I got into both schools. Marquette gave me a little bit more money, but it was way in Wisconsin, way far from my family. I kind of didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
Gonzaga was a little bit better fit, but they just weren't giving me as much money. So I went to go visit the school. I brought both financial aid packets and I said, hey, Marquette's giving me this much money. Here's how much money you're giving me. If you can match or beat their price, I will sign today. Like it was kind of like a hardcore close for the university. And it was really funny because the lady at financial aid was literally like, let me go talk to my manager, right? Like, let me go to the back room and
Right.
talk to the head person. And then they came back and they're like, well, you're in luck. We have some extra financial aid money. So we're going to bump up your academic scholarship from like 5,000 to 10,000 a year, whatever it was.
Right.
And that was what did it. And so for us, we still had to pay some money for school, but it wasn't as much because we didn't have a lot of funding, which
Right.
is, by the way, helpful for a lot of students to know, is that there are some schools that have very generous programs. For me, Gonzaga was a great university because they were very generous with their students who didn't have the money for it. And so we had to come up with like 5 to 10 grand a year for me to go there. And this is where like kind of the next phase came, which was my parents got me through the first year. And then I came home and they said, sorry, John, we can't do this. And skateboarding was starting to take off for me. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll just like quit school, come home and professional, like just go pro like some of my friends have. But here was the thing. This was the inspiration that really kind of led to the book that I wrote, Skating Through College, which was, of all the people, a lot of my friends who were skating that did go pro, they got an injury And then they were gone. They were done with the sport. They couldn't play anymore. And then they also didn't have a degree. They didn't even have a high school education. And so they were literally working at Jiffy Lube and getting a GED on the weekends. And I saw that and I was like, I don't want that. So for me, there was like this strong I had like a lot of chips on my shoulder where it was like, I didn't come from like a lot of money. My parents, were struggling. My community, my friends weren't doing that great. And I was like, I want something different. So I came home my summer from freshman to sophomore year, frantically looking for a job. I needed something that paid more than minimum wage because I had to make about with financial aid, it was going to be about, for me, that second semester was like $8,000 I had to make on my own. And so I heard about selling Cutco knives as a summer job. I had some friends from high school who did it. I came in for an interview and I was not a salesperson. I'd never sold anything in my life. I'd only had one job before that. I worked at a movie theater for a month before I got mono and had to quit my senior year. And then I got a job selling Cutco and I killed it. I made it was like $5K that summer that I made, which got me through most of school. And then I made some extra money during school to pay for the rest of it. I got an on-campus job. And then the next year, I did Harlan. I did everything. I applied to be an RA. I became an RA. I got all my housing, room, and board covered. I came back and started selling Cutco that next summer. I made like $15,000 that second summer because I knew what I was doing then. And then I just would work part-time during school. And then that next summer I made like over $20,000 in the summer selling knives, which sounds crazy. It's like, how can you do that? I mean, that's for me where I got really bit with the bug of like sales and business, which is that your only limitation is yourself. And for me, I always was an athlete. I wanted to be like elite, but I was always good, but I was never elite. I was never like Olympic level, performance. So for me, what I loved about business, and hopefully this is inspiring for people, is that while you have certain physical limitations to be a professional athlete, those limitations do not exist for your ability to be successful in business, because it really comes down to you, right? For me in sales, it was like, well, how many phone calls can I make? How many appointments can I do? That is purely up to me. That doesn't mean that I don't have to be 6 or 7 feet tall to do that. Right. I don't have to have different character. I just need to choose to do it. And that for me, and that's Harlan, where literally everything changed in my life. And I became really successful in sales, and I got to skate through college, like try to be pro and get a college degree at the same time. And with that, I was just like, well, I need to pay for it somehow. So it was like all these things merged together. That's why the title of the book, the first book I wrote, is called Skating Through College: How to Pursue Your Passions, right? To do something you care about, make a difference, like help people. And 3 is without sacrificing your GPA, like how to still get good grades, because it doesn't have to be a trade-off. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And for me, that's what got me through school. And it was such a great experience. And I'm so glad I did it. It was really hard. Like college is hard. High school was hard. That's okay. It's also hard being a parent, being an adult. So it's just preparing you for the future.
So I want to take a step back, and you are faced with this bill. You've got $8,000 you got to cover. You have never made $8,000 before. You don't really know how to make money because you never really worked before. You hear about people selling knives, and then do you instantly think, that's the solution? How do you get into that room to talk to that person to then see if this is a fit?
Honestly, it was a bit of, I don't think I thought too deeply about that. All I knew was singular goal. I need to pay for school, whatever it takes. So for me, I remember applying for like 20 different jobs, and literally nobody called me back because my only job experience on my resume was like one job for 1 month.
It doesn't look good, man. No one wants to hire the guy who's worked for a month.
I learned to leave off the application.
Right. You're better off not having worked at all.
Yeah. And then I just got really lucky. So Vector Marketing is the parent company of Cutco Knives. And so they're active recruiters of college students. And so and it's definitely not a job for everybody because it's commission based. So, it's I don't want to say it's sink or swim, because they do give you a lot of training and a lot of support, which I needed. So I don't think I came in like with this grand vision of like, I'm going to kill it. I was like, I'm grateful I got a job.
So it's sophomore year. I like to get into the weeds with this because your story is so exciting, because I know there are people who are watching and they're saying, wow, this guy was, what's the most you made? Like your senior year, what did you make that year?
Yeah. So like by my senior year, I was pretty seasoned. I had a good customer base, people who had bought from me in the past. which, continued to be customers moving forward. And I had learned a lot of skills. I had learned different ways of selling. We would sell at trade shows or home and garden shows or events and things like that. And I really spent that time learning skills. So by the time I was a senior, like I think I made about 50 grand while a senior.
Like I mean, I got to drop everything. That's crazy, John. I mean, as a senior to make $50,000 and not even having graduated. I mean, the whole idea is you want to get a degree so that you could make, enough to take care of yourself. I mean, that's unbelievable. Like, so I want to understand, because you got to this point where you realized anything is possible, and I've seen other students get to this point. And I think it was with Coach Downey, where you realized that you could do something that you never realized you could do. With the grades, like the breakthrough of the grades and like changing your dynamics. And that was like, wow, if I could do that, then maybe I could do anything. There was not fear. So then when you got into when you got into the sales training program, and you went through this, explain that, like explain what happens. So for someone who wants to be you, and maybe, I mean, they could do it through Vector selling knives. They could do it through leasing real estate. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do it, or it's through, setting up an online store. Or I want to know, like tell me about that. And did you think of quitting? Was there a time where you knew it was going to work? Like, just get a little deep into that journey.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that I'll give you two parts to that. Number one, so the part in high school, and I realized, as because you asked about this earlier, what changed for me in high school was because I saw how hard it was for my family. I saw how much money we didn't have. I saw how my friends were just absolutely in turbulent times, and I fortunately was around these people who are like, their parents make good money, they're doing well, and so for me, I literally saw, I'm like, college is the answer. Like, college is the way I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to make a better life for myself, my family, my future family. So like that was the moment where I was like, so the answer is college. Well, if college is the answer, what's the next step? Well, number one, your grades need to get out of the crapper. And actually you need to be able to get into school. So it's kind of like one step in front of the other. So when I got into college, like here's what changed everything. Right. So, and this was where I think I love, and not all sales jobs are for everybody, but I think that everyone should get a sales job at some point in your college career or life, because there's something you learn by doing something and you get paid directly based on what you created. Okay. So that's the unique thing with sales, is that if I sold, like, let's just give like some really simple numbers. If I was at like a 10% commission, right, which would mean commission is like a percent pay of what you sell, and I sell $1,000, I would make $100, right? So that's pretty simple math. So, well, let's just say, and there's an amount of time that might take. It might take you a week to make 1,000 in sales for whatever you're doing. Maybe if you get really good, it could happen in a day. So the whole point is, like, if in a week, I know the work that it would take to sell $1,000 of something and make 10% and make $100. The question becomes, well, what would I need to do in a week's time to sell 2,000? And what I learned, Harlan, this is where the bug bit me, which was skills and specialized knowledge. Which is that if I learned more about my product, and I remember this when I went to like a training that I didn't get paid for, but it was like, hey, we're not paying you for this, but you can learn how to sell things better. You can learn how to sell different packages of products. And I went to this training and I learned all these minutiae of the product and ways to present it and show it. And I was able to convert and do the same amount of work, right? Same number of appointments, but be able to increase my average per customer double. And so I made twice as much in the same time. So for me, it was like this, hold on a second. If I learn more, it is directly correlated with how much money I make. And I was like, holy crap, if that's the case, how much more can I learn? So I became this huge sponge of, like, not even just what my company would teach me. Like, I went through every possible training I could to learn everything I could, but I would pick up books on like sales and meeting people and making connections and every aspect about business and life. And I just became this feverish learner, and it every time I learned more, I made more money. And I think that's such a valuable skill, because while it's not directly correlated, I mean, you could make correlations to what type of job you get out of college. Right? Because you could go into college and just kind of be like everybody else and just like learn the basics things, or you could think of a career path and you could get feverishly curious. And I recommend people like get internships, work for free at places you want to work, uh, just so you can get the time to learn and make the connections. And then later on, like you just have all these things that others don't have. So when you graduate, you've got a lot of opportunities. So like Harlan, when I graduated and I was already making 50 grand a year, I mean, I had tons of job opportunities. I had customers that I would sell knives to. I remember this happened during my senior year. I did a sales call with somebody. It's really funny. I was in this customer's house. I was selling the wife a set of knives. The husband walks in and he didn't know I was coming in. So he's like, who in the hell is this young man in the kitchen with my wife, right? And I could instantly tell he's concerned. So I knew, because of my training experience, I was like, I need to warm him up to me and I need to like break communication with his wife. So I stopped talking to her and I just said, hey, how's it going? Like, did you just get back from work? How was your day? And I started engaging him and asking questions. And I was like, oh yeah, she tells me you're into hunting and fishing. And I learned how to build rapport really quickly. And then by the end of it, like we had a really good connection. And he literally was like, what are you selling, knives? Cool. Yeah, you can just buy whatever you want, sweetheart. And she goes on and buys whatever she does. Here's what was interesting. I finished that sales call. I'm done. I leave. I'm at school. I get a phone call from the husband. And he says, I just got to tell you, I was so impressed with how you worked with me when I didn't want you in my house that I was literally telling my son about you, who lives in Seattle, Washington, and he's in mortgage and real estate, and he's got a job opening starting at $70K a year. And I told him that he needs to hire you. So if you want, you can go to Seattle right now and interview for your job, and it's going to start at $70K a year. And I was like, holy crap, like how does that happen? And it happens because of how we choose to treat the off season, how we choose to because like how we treat like college. Like some people think that college is like that it's just a time to learn. I think the best way to learn is to learn and apply, learn and apply, learn and apply, because the more you do, knowledge stacks, and you don't really know something until you actually do it. So for me, Cutco is like this really great platform of like training where I would learn things and apply them and get directly paid for what I got. And that's where everything in my life completely changed, as far as how I approach learning, how I approach studying, and how I approached business in general.
So when you're selling, everybody has heroes. I'm a firm believer that it's about people, places, and patience. That's the formula. It's who are my people, where are my places where I can learn and grow, and how long will it take for me to get where I want to go.
Absolutely.
So I know that there are some really extraordinary people who you met at Cutco.
Yeah.
Who were some of these people, and who continue to be some of these people who are in your corner?
Yeah. Well, so what I would say is that, and this is a caution for anybody who wants to get in business or whatever line of work you want to get into, is that it's important to learn how to be successful by being yourself. Early in my career, because I'll give you like examples of where that didn't go well, where my early first mentor at Cutco, like he was like a hardcore salesperson. Like he was just like, he would do borderline like ethical things to close a sale. And I remember being like, oh, I guess that's okay. But I also didn't feel good while I did it. And I remember when I went to a conference and I got to meet all these other sales reps, and I met this girl named Katie. And she was like the most low key person from the Midwest, really friendly. And she sold more than I did every year. And she was the same age as me. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, you can just be normal. Like you can just be yourself and do well here. So for me, that really, and that made a big difference in how I showed up on my appointments and being authentic and being congruent and just being myself. So that made a big difference. And then for me, it was constantly leveling up who I spent time with. Like at one time I broke the all-time national sales record for the month of December in the company history. So it's like, well, how do you do something like that? And number one, I had to call the guy who broke the record and held it for 10 years and make friends with him and ask him questions.
Who is that?
His name is Carl Drew. And Carl taught me everything he did to set the record. And so I basically did everything he said and then some.
Was there one thing that he did that was like so groundbreaking that you can just share? Because I'm so interested.
Totally. So this is interesting. When we talk about the value of focus, right? If you need to hit a goal, whether it be a sales goal, a study goal, or whatever it is for you, focus is key. And so he talked about the extremeness of, he's like, if I break the sales goal, I need to literally only focus on sales. So for this entire month, he's like, so what are my biggest distractions? And for him, the first thing he said was television. Television is like the thing that's going to like, if I don't hit my goal, it's because I watch too much TV. So he said, how can I get rid of this? How can I make sure that doesn't happen? He literally unhinged his TV. He went to the trash can and he threw his TV away. It was perfectly good, but he threw it away. And he said, you know what? I will make enough money during this time to buy a new TV when it's over. But right now I need to get that. So I need to get that out of my life. So what I saw for him
You
was,
run and get, or you couldn't get the TV because this happened in the past. All
oh
right.
yeah, he lived in Indiana. So this is like really far away. So, but what I heard was like, he was willing to literally do anything to get any distraction out of his way because and this is what's important about like, I think students and commitment, because a lot of people say they're committed to something, but all there really are is they're interested, which is like, hey, that would be nice. And they're not truly committed, because true commitment is like, I will do anything I need to do to get what I want. And so for me, I heard him say that. And so I had asked myself that question, what would I need to do? What would be my biggest distractions? And for me at that time was my phone, right? For a lot of people now. And so I said, okay, what could I do to guarantee that my phone won't be a distraction? So number one, it was literally deleting every app off my phone. And Harlan, this is where it got crazy. I went through my phone and I deleted every single contact of anybody who would not directly help me achieve my sales goal. And I got my phone contacts from 200 down to 8.
Wow.
And now what I did was I took everybody who was important, because by the way, I'm telling you, my mom didn't make that list. I love my mom, but it was just, she wasn't.
How didn't she make the list? Because she didn't help you to sell? Is that what was the criteria?
Long story there. But
okay. Next time.
It was, I love my mom. It was just like, we had like a unique relationship.
Okay.
Super healthy. So I put anyone who wasn't on, who I didn't feel would help on a sheet of paper. And I said, if I really need to call them, I can look up the sheet of paper and I can call them. But until then, nothing matters until I hit the sales goal. And Harlan, what was so fascinating was I learned that no one called me. No one reached out. And so for me, it really saw like how much I create my own distraction in my life.
Yeah.
And I went on and I broke the national sales record. And so it was just a really fascinating experience to learn how to be in control of my environment, learn how to be in control of my results, and learn what it's like to really truly be committed to something.
Yeah.
So Carla taught me that.
Has someone contacted you to try and learn your secrets so that they can shatter your record?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And what do you do when they reach out to you? Are you responsive and helpful, or are you?
Yeah. So here's what I generally say. So like, I mean, as like a profession, so I'm a keynote speaker. I also do professional coaching, right? So actually, I legitimately train salespeople as a regular part of my business now. So and not necessarily with the Cutco company, but just salespeople in general. And so anytime someone reaches out, if they've got questions and they're hungry to learn, I will always do a call, like the first call, like no charge. I'm just like, what do you want? What do you need to know? And I will help them as much as I can. And I just say, hey, beyond that, if you want some serious coaching, like if you want to, if you're ready to make that investment in yourself, here's my prices. And I can say that confidently with people, because even for some, I mean, by the way, I'm not trying to like get a bunch of college kids to pay me money to learn how to sell things. I say that because early in my life, I mean, I paid for coaching. Like I remember being 23 years old, and I invested $5,000 a month to get coached by, at the time, and I mentioned this, he was the #1 rep in the history of the company. And I paid him $500 a month to talk every single week for an entire year. And I said, teach me everything you know. And he did. And that helped me. That year I made $100,000 when I was 23 and out of college. And it was just like, beyond that, it was like, I just saw there's so much value in investing in yourself. And by the way, college is an investment in yourself, and it goes beyond college. If you want to keep growing, you want to find different ways to invest in yourself to get to where you want to be. Sometimes it's paying for coaching. Sometimes it's paying for online school. It's a never ending process, but like skills translate into income.
Yeah, I love that you're not afraid to reach out to people who are doing the things that you want to do. When you're focused on a goal, it's not, I'm going to sit here and try to manifest it through just sitting. It's you find the people who are in the places who are doing the things you want to do, and you reach out to them, and some are responsive and some are not, I imagine, right? And you just know that because that's part of sales. So, John, gosh, you're so generous. Thanks for sharing so much. You're so interesting, and there's so much more that I would love to talk to you about. We didn't even get into the Mr. Thank You Project, and I really encourage people to check out your TEDx talk, and we're going to include that here with the notes. Also, I strongly encourage them to check out the book as well. So tell me right now, we're gonna close this up in just about 2 minutes. I want to know what you're working on and what your dream is. What's your dream right now
Yeah.
that you're focused on, that you're excited about, that's consuming you?
Yeah, so it's twofold. So, I mean, well, I guess threefold. Number one is I'm a parent, so I'm married. We have three children. My wife is expecting our fourth in February of 2021. So uh, that's my number one thing. Like that's everything I do. I have evolved my business to take care of my family. So I think what I tell people, if you want to get into business, I don't think that the purpose of business is not to run a business. The purpose of business is to design the perfect life for you. Right. And that's for me what I've really tried to do is I've tried to design and structure how I do things, how I work with customers, how I work with people so that I can be home every single day and not be on the road all the time, which can be difficult in sales. And as you know, as a professional speaker, it can be
Yeah.
challenging. So that's my number one thing. The number two thing is partially with the Mr. Thank You project, right? So our business goal. So now I do speaking consulting for companies, businesses. I still do some college speaking, not as much. It's mostly in the business realm. So our mission is to rehumanize the workplace and marketplace, and that is important to me because uh, I feel, having been in sales for so long, there is a major distrust of sales, understandably
Hmm.
and understandably so. And for me, I was able to build a thriving career in business because I just took care of people. I'm focused on the human to human interaction. I called when I didn't need something. I did certain things that just built relationships that created job opportunities outside of what I did. And for me, I just really want to teach people how to do that because there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear right now, especially with COVID-19 in the midst of when this is being recorded. There's a lot of fear out there. And so what I'm here to tell you is that like, if you just take care of people, they'll take care of you, right? Regardless of what happens in the world. And so my goal is just to teach business people how to do that. So we have a framework we teach called Becoming Irreplaceable. Essentially, how do you become somebody your clients don't want to live without? Right. That's the message I speak to businesses on. Now with Mr. Thank You, and this is how they kind of tie together. And Mr. Thank You kind of built that. So our mission is to inspire 74 million thank you cards written around the world. So how that came about, by the way, is actually a funny college story. I was in a college biology class, and the teacher was talking about all the oceans on the planet. And he was the question he said was, how much energy do you think it would take to raise every body of water, all the oceans in the world, all the lakes? How much energy do you think it would take to raise all those bodies of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit? No one knew the answer. And he said, it's a lot. And it was some bajillion kilojoules, like it was a huge number. And what he was getting to is he said, that's not gonna happen from any one fish, any one person, any one country. It is a result of collective neglect. Now, what he was getting into is a conversation about global warming and environment and whatever people's beliefs are on that. The whole point he had was that collective neglect can have a negative impact on anything, your environment, your school, your workplace. And so I remember thinking that and thinking like, well, that's interesting. That's what it would look like in the negative.
Right.
What if we could do something in the positive? And that's where this whole idea of, I chose to write 5 thank you cards every day for a year to kind of catalyze this idea of like, what if we could inspire 74 million thank you cards written around the world? That is effectively 1% of the world's population. There are 7.4 billion people on the planet. And so for me, that gets me excited because it's real. We actually built MrThankYou.com to track that. So if anyone hears this, you start writing thank you cards to people, you pick up my book or anything like that, you get inspired to do this. You can actually start your own gratitude project. You can go to MrThankYou.com, create a free account, and then you can log the cards that you've written to people. Cool thing is if you put their name and their zip code, it will actually give you a global gratitude map, which shows where your cards are going around the world. So our big thing right now is like, we want to just influence the world with positivity, with gratitude, and not just like this flippantly like, yeah, let's just all be happy, but like in a real physical, tangible, trackable way. And we can actually do that with our website. So those are my 3 things that I'm really focused on right now.
So to summarize, it's family, it's Mr. Thank You, and the third is, did I miss the third?
It was rehumanizing the workplace and marketplace.
Rehumanizing the workplace. Yes, and that folded into Mr. Thank You. I was so engaged in everything you were saying, and just really moved. And you're very inspiring, and I'm excited not only to have the chance to share you with everybody who's participating in this, but I'm most excited, John, to be able to connect with you, and like the gift of this is as I get to visit with you and see your light and understand how you continue to be exceptional and inspire other people. And I look forward to continuing this off camera. because I just enjoy you. You're just a nice energy to be around. So if anybody wants to check out John's information, you can visit mrthankyou.com. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
mrthankyou.com. You can also check out the books, The Skating Through College. And if you want to help humanize your business and you want to learn how to connect with people in a deep, meaningful way while being able to share your gifts, John is in your corner to help you through that as well. John, I know we got a hard stop here. Is there anything else, any damage control, anything else you want to leave? I always give people a chance because sometimes people offer and they're like, "Oh, I wish I could clear this up." And this is the part where I offer the gift of clearing anything out.
Nah, I mean, all I will say is like number one, like kudos to you if you're watching this, right? Like you're, which basically means like you're choosing a better life for yourself, right? Like you don't listen to Harlan unless you want to be a better person. And so I think that number one, that idea is important to have. Last piece I would leave with is something to keep in mind is that education and learning are very safe. It's easy to read a book. It's easy to watch a video. It's hard and it's nerve-wracking to pick up the phone and call somebody. It's nerve-wracking to go in for a job interview you might not get. It's terrifying to try to do something that you might fail at. And I think that is really where learning becomes valuable. So keep in mind that learning is safe, action is adventurous, and that's also where you get to have the greatest stories, the greatest experiences, and ultimately get what you really want in life. And I know you're a big proponent of failure, Harlan, and really embracing it and rejection. And I think that the more people can do that, the better off they'll be.
Yeah, I mean, to get where you want to go, you got to get through it, and it's not always pretty, and
Yeah.
it can be uncomfortable. And we have someone like you who's in their corner to help them along the way. So
Yeah.
thanks, John, for being such a
Man, you too, Harlan Cohen. Gotta
Thanks,
keep
man.
doing it.
Grateful to be here. Thanks for joining us, and thank you everybody for being here for Before College TV's 5 Questions with John Israel. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, John.